So we've had a request for trees. I have a few examples here, and you know, it's easier to do a pine tree. Let's kind of work on that first. And I'm just going to get a little paint. You can use pretty much any color you want. It doesn't have to be green. And maybe we do like let's do a few kind of tree exercises here. So the first thing that I like to do is to draw a line, and it's, you know, easier to go down than it is to go up, but you could do it either way. So draw yourself a few straight lines. You know, and that's not a bad practice actually, to try and see either going both ways here. See if you can do this. They don't have to all be the same distance. Okay, put a little one here. And the next thing there's, you know, many ways to do this, okay? But if I'm, you know, if we look at these pictures, we see that, you know, the trees are actually more irregular than your brain thinks that they are. So that's why I like to have some reference to look at. So one way is to, you know, start at the top here, and you can almost do one side, kind of have the brush way up straight. And I like to just kind of draw a few lines. You get a little larger down at the bottom. And then you can do the other side. Sometimes you make the tree a little bit taller. But what you're looking for, you want to also cover the front too. You know, we're painting both sides of the tree basically. But then you also have to kind of give it a little bit of foliage in the front in order to cover up that tree trunk. All right? So let's do that again. You can also, you know, here's another way where instead of doing one side and then the other, you kind of just go across this direction and then still cover up that trunk a little bit. All right. Let's do a couple more. So basically, what's a nice thing to do is sort of just practice here. Just practice some trees. You know, and they're all a little different. Some are have more of the foliage up at the top, less down at the bottom. Okay, like that. And cover. Get it a little fuller in the middle here. These are all just pine trees here. Deciduous, evergreen, evergreens. Deciduous are the ones that lose their leaves. Okay. So here's a few more here. You can try different brushes and see what effects you get with different brushes. I'm fairly used to using the round for this. Let's see. Let me show you what a flat will do. Got a little. Here's my little a 1/4 inch flat. Let's try that. Get it green out here. Okay. So this is going to give you a different look, right? A little wider, less detail, which is not a bad thing. What you need to do is just sort of get used to how the brush works, and use each brush in a different way. It's not the same. You have to kind of hold them a little differently. Let's see if I can get a little paint off of this. Right. If it's not such a full brush, I have a little, you know, if there's a little less paint in it, I have a little more way of getting the detail here. Alright, just a couple close together. Let's try a few more here. We can try and go up with it. I've gone through and I will send you all this reference that I have of all the different kinds of trees for you to use. Go a little bluer, if I can find my blue paint. Blue and green. Nice spruce tree here. Okay, let's do another one here. And that's not quite so regular. Now look, I'm putting so much water on the paper because the paper's dry. So I can put as much water as I want on my brush, and it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to stay exactly where I put it. All right. So here's another kind of tree. More bushy. Get a little more paint here. Try a couple more. Those are nice. These guys that are kind of off and have, very tall branches. These are more of the big Adirondack white pines that you see. Right. You just want to cover up that trunk. Just make sure that you don't see the trunk through the foliage. That's all. Okay, and one more. Let's do a little. My brush is very full of water, so look at this tree reference that I have for you. Some of the branches, they're different. Each tree has different kinds of branches. Some go up. They grow up. Others grow down, and so the more realistic, the more you notice what kind of tree you're painting or pay attention, the more realistic your trees will be. Okay, and again, it's just practice. I'm moving the trunk over a little bit, right? So we want to get them a little wider at the bottom than they are at the top. Yeah, and that's the deal. You can come back in with another color later on and add a little more. Give it a little more dimension, some shadowing, right? So I'm painting in around it, trying to make some darker shadows. Grab some darker color. When I'm using the big brush, this is a 10 or 12, doesn't matter. Whatever you're comfortable with, favorite brush, it's okay. Anything is fine. People, artists, whoever they are, do trees in many different ways, tons of different ways. So this is my trick for how to do a tree. Okay. Let me show you again. The key is you want it to look irregular. You don't want it to look like it came from a Christmas tree farm, and you don't want the branches to be the same on both sides. That's all. Okay. Cover up that trunk a little bit. Get a little wider there. And the nice thing is, you get a few, and then you can kind of combine them. And we can make a little hill here. All of a sudden we have a bank of trees, right? Add a little more water here. Get it a little looser looking. Looks like a nursery because all the trees are a little different. Let's show you some deciduous trees. I'm going to also include this copy from a book, watercolormagic.com, April 2007. This was an interesting page that we liked. You know, here's the many different techniques for doing trees, right? This is a sponge technique or a spatter kind of thing. This one is sponge. This is a round brush. You know, anyway, it talks about many different ways to do trees. Probably as many ways as there are trees. So let's show you a few of these guys, right? We've got some deciduous trees, all different shapes and colors. And my easy way of doing these, again, is to still, you know, work on the trunk first. Give yourself a little bit of a trunk. And you don't really necessarily need all the branches because you're going to kind of fill in around the trunk. It's just sort of, the trunk is a guide to kind of tell you where the tree is. So many ways you can almost work on just putting on the outside of the tree, the outer edge, and then start to kind of fill this in. You don't want to fill it in all the way because you want your tree to have a little bit of space and light coming through it, right? So if we fill this in a little, something kind of like that. Okay, he's changing shape. The tree is getting bigger. Looks like an apple tree now. Okay. Change. Add a little more water. You know, in general, you're not trying to paint every single leaf on a tree. Let's try another one here. And maybe we do it this way first. So here I am putting in the shape. And I'm gonna make some branches, or just sort of pull the color around. And let's try putting the trunk on after here. See what that does. Right, so there's no set way of having to do this. You can put the trunk in first or later. Right, I'm gonna, while it's wet, we can even add a few little branches here. They're gonna disappear, but that's okay. Something like this. Now we end up around here always wanting to draw foliage. Even though it's spring. No, it's spring, we can't do foliage yet. We gotta do some these spring trees. So, okay, here's another. Let's see if we can do something in a different way. So this time I'm gonna just make some little, this is more of a dry brush look here. And my brush is a little dry, just kind of pulling it around. Add some water. Trunk. Okay, the trunk is always a little wider at the bottom. Add a few branches. You know, it's watercolor is wonderful because you're giving somebody an impression of something, right? Your tree, you know, you're not going to paint every single leaf. You're trying to create some atmosphere and sense of place. And so, you know, what your trees look like depend on whether they're in the foreground, in which case they'd have a little more detail, or whether they're in the background, in which case they would be very simple. Let's see if we can find a few other examples here. Okay. I'm also going to pass you along this guy. This is another compilation of a bunch of different tree landscapes that we've done in the past. You know, usually when you're painting something and it's sort of foreground or midground or background, you know, your trees are going to kind of all come together in one, you know, larger clump. We'll do that. Well, let's do that a little later. I'll have that. I am mumbling today. Okay. can absolutely, we can start to draw, I can show you how to draw some trees as well here. I'll pull out some other examples of the trunks of trees too. Okay, so if we've got something that's changing its foliage, maybe it's got a little green in it also. Put the green down at the bottom. But you know, what I'm trying to do is have my brush sort of skip along the dry paper and give me a lot of you know, white space inside the tree, so that we can see a little bit of the you know, the branches on the tree. Now, when you're mixing, you know, an orange and a green, you're going to end up with a bit of brown. So just keep that in mind. Or wait, do the orange first and add the green later. The opposite way. Let's see what else we can do. Let's try another one here. Yeah, come over on the side. Okay, let's try one where we kind of do the outside edge. You know, I'm pushing and pulling my brush different directions. I didn't do the trunk this time. Let's see what we put on later. Maybe we get a little bit of red too. See if we can get some red going. Need some white space. Okay. Grab some color for the trunk. And the branches, you could have some roots coming down. And I'm just adding this while it's still wet. I'll move around a little bit. I mean, I can pull a little off if I want. Actually, it looks a lot like branches. Okay. There you go. And when these dry, you can do the same thing. You can come back and add a little bit more. You can take a little off, right? Blot them a little bit, get them a little lighter so they look like they're further away. Okay, all kinds of things. Let's do a little on there too. So always remember, there's all different kinds of techniques for you know, how you treat your watercolors. Do you blot it at the end so that you end up with these lots of nice blooms, and you kind of emphasize that. It's just important to look, right? You can do, you can make your trees anyway, but the key is to just really observe what you're painting, okay? So, yeah.